The Vexery Dominion had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. Their warships moved through space like angry gods, destroying anything that stood in their way. No species had ever defeated them. No planet had ever resisted them for long. They believed they were the most powerful beings in the universe, and for 11,000 years, nothing had proven them wrong. Admiral Voreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Throne of Ashes. He was old by Vexery standards, his gray skin marked with the scars of 100 conquests. His eyes were cold and yellow, and they had watched countless worlds burn. He felt no guilt about this. The Vexery did not believe in guilt. They believed in power. Power meant taking what you wanted. The fleet had been traveling through a quiet region of space, called the Kellen Threshold. It was empty territory, far from any known civilization. Voreth was bored. He wanted something to conquer, something to destroy. His weapons had been silent for too long. Then the sensors detected something. "Admiral," his scanning officer said, "we have found an object. It appears to be a ship, but it is very small, very primitive." Voreth leaned forward in his command chair. "Show me." The view screen flickered to life. The object was indeed small, barely larger than a Vexery escape pod. Its design was strange and unfamiliar. There were no weapons visible on its hull, no shields, no engines that the Vexery recognized. It was drifting slowly through the void, completely helpless. "It appears to be unmanned," the scanning officer continued. "We are detecting no life signs. The technology is extremely basic, faster than light, by our estimates." Voreth felt a small flicker of disappointment. He had hoped for a challenge. This was nothing. Just a piece of floating garbage from some primitive species that had probably destroyed itself long ago. "Destroy it," he said. No one questioned the order. No one ever questioned Voreth's orders. The weapons officer pressed a button, and 72 plasma lances fired in perfect unison. The beams of superheated energy crossed the distance in less than a heartbeat. The small vessel exploded into 1,000,000 pieces, scattering debris across the empty space. Voreth smiled. It was not much, but destruction was destruction. It felt good to remind the universe who was in charge. "Target eliminated," the weapons officer reported. "No survivors." "No," he stopped mid-sentence. His voice caught in his throat. "What is it?" Voreth demanded. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission." From the debris field, Voreth stood up so fast that his chair scraped against the floor. "That is impossible. Nothing survives plasma bombardment. Nothing." "I know, Admiral. But the signal is there. It is weak, but it is definitely coming from the wreckage." The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and stared at the view screen. The debris field floated peacefully in space, glowing faintly from the heat of the weapons fire. There should have been nothing left alive in that cloud of destruction. There should have been nothing left at all. But the signal was real. The computers confirmed it. Something in that debris was still transmitting. "Put it through," Voreth ordered. The speakers crackled with static. Then, cutting through the noise, came a single word. It repeated over and over again, steady and clear, in a language that no Vexery had ever heard before. "Earth, Earth, Earth." The word meant nothing to Voreth. He had conquered 1,000 worlds, learned 100 languages, studied the histories of countless species, but this word was completely unknown to him. It was not in any database. It was not connected to any known civilization. "What is Earth?" he asked. No one answered, because no one knew. The communications officer worked frantically at her station, trying to decode more of the signal. "Admiral, there is more than just the word. The transmission contains coordinates. It is broadcasting a location." "A location? Where?" She pulled up a star map on the main screen. A small red dot appeared in a distant arm of the galaxy, far from Vexery space, far from anywhere the Dominion had ever explored. "There," she said. "That is where the signal is pointing. That is where Earth is." Voreth stared at the dot on the map. It was so small, so far away, so insignificant. and yet something about it made him uneasy. He had felt this way before, long ago, when he was young and still capable of fear. He had forgotten what fear felt like, but now, staring at that tiny red dot, he remembered. "The vessel we destroyed," he said slowly. "What was it?" The scanning officer had been analyzing the debris. His face had gone pale, which was unusual for a Vexery. "Admiral, I do not believe it was a ship." "Not exactly. It appears to have been a probe. An unmanned vessel designed to travel through space and make contact with other species." "A messenger," Vorith said. "Yes, Admiral. A messenger. It was carrying data packages, cultural information, scientific formulas, music, art, messages of greeting." He paused. "It was a peaceful mission. They were trying to say hello." Vorith felt the cold feeling in his chest grow stronger. He had destroyed a peace offering. He had fired on a species that had reached out in friendship. This did not bother him morally. The Vexery did not believe in morality, but it bothered him strategically, because now, somewhere out there, someone knew what had happened. The signal was still transmitting, still broadcasting the word Earth and the coordinates, still sending its message out into the void. And Vorith realized, with growing horror, that the signal was not meant for the Vex-Ari. It was meant for whoever was waiting at. Its coordinates, it was a distress call. "Admiral," the communications officer said, her voice barely a whisper, "the signal is getting stronger. Something is boosting it. The debris itself is acting as an amplifier." Vorith made a decision. He did not know who or what was at those coordinates. He did not know what kind of species would send a primitive probe across the galaxy just to say hello. But he knew one thing for certain. He needed to find out. "Set course for the coordinates," he ordered. "Maximum speed. I want to see this Earth for myself." The fleet turned as one, their massive engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Behind them, the debris field continued to broadcast its simple message. One word, one location. One warning, and somewhere impossibly far away, in a place the Vexery could not imagine, something very old and very patient received the signal. It had been waiting for a very long time. It had learned to be careful. It had learned to watch before acting. But now it knew where the Vexery were. And it knew what they had done. The hunters had just become the hunted. They simply did not know it yet. 3 days passed. The Vexery fleet remained at the Kellen threshold while their scientists studied the debris. Admiral Vorith wanted answers before he traveled to the unknown coordinates. He wanted to know exactly what kind of species had built that probe. He wanted to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and how easily they could be conquered. The scientists worked without rest. They collected every piece of debris they could find. They analyzed every signal, every data fragment, every molecule of the strange metal that had survived the plasma bombardment, and slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand what they had destroyed. The probe had been carrying a treasure of information. There were recordings of music unlike anything the Vexery had ever heard. There were images of strange landscapes filled with blue water and green plants. There were mathematical formulas that showed a basic understanding of physics. And there was a message spoken by a creature with soft skin and small eyes, translated by the probe's own systems. "We are the people of Earth. We come in peace. We seek knowledge and friendship among the stars. If you find this message, please know that we mean you no harm. We only wish to learn. We only wish to connect." The Vexery Council watched the recording in their great chamber. Some of them laughed. The creature in the message looked weak and fragile. Its words spoke of peace and friendship, concepts that the Vexery considered foolish. Only the weak sought friendship. The strong took what they wanted. "You're primitives," one council member declared. "They have barely discovered space travel. They will be easy to conquer," the others agreed. They began making plans for invasion. They discussed how many ships they would need, how long the conquest would take, and how they would divide the spoils. It was a familiar conversation. They had held it 1,000 times before, but one Vexery did not join the celebration. Her name was Salith. and she was a junior tactical officer aboard the Throne of Ashes. She was young by Vexery standards, barely 200 years old, but she had a gift for numbers. And she had noticed something that the others had missed. She requested a private meeting with Admiral Voreth. He agreed mostly out of curiosity. Junior officers rarely had anything important to say. "Speak quickly," he told her. "I do not have time for foolishness." Salith took a deep breath. "Admiral, I have been studying the probe. Specifically, I have been calculating its age and trajectory. The probe has been traveling for over 40,000 years. Vorath raised one eyebrow. This was slightly interesting, but not remarkable. The universe was old, and many species had risen and fallen in its long history. So they sent their message a long time ago, he said. What of it? Admiral, the probe's construction is remarkable for a pre-faster-than-light species. The engineering is clever and efficient. Based on the technology level shown in the probe, I estimate that this species was on the verge of discovering faster-than-light travel when they launched it. Vorath began to see where she was going. You are saying that they have had 40,000 years to develop since then? Yes, Admiral. 40,000 years. Using standard developmental models, a species that was close to faster-than-light travel 40,000 years ago should now be one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They should have colonized thousands of worlds. They should have built fleets that dwarf our own. They should be everywhere. She pulled up a star map and showed him her calculations. Starting from the coordinates labeled Earth, she had drawn possible expansion patterns. If humanity had grown at even a slow rate, they should have spread across half the galaxy by now. Their territory should have overlapped with Vexery space centuries ago. But we have never encountered them, Voreth said slowly. No, Admiral, we have not, and that is what frightens me. Voreth sat back in his chair. He did not like this feeling. He did not like not understanding something. For 11,000 years, the Vexery had been the masters of their domain. They knew everything about the species they conquered. They knew their technologies, their cultures, their weaknesses. But this species called humanity was a mystery. There are only two explanations, Salith continued. Either they destroyed themselves long ago, which is common for primitive species, or they are hiding, Voreth finished. Yes, Admiral, they are hiding. And if they are hiding, I must ask the question that troubles me most. She looked directly into his yellow eyes. What are they hiding from? The question hung in the air like poison. Voreth had conquered 1,000 worlds. He had faced enemies of every kind, but he had never faced an enemy that chose to hide. Hiding was the strategy of the weak, and a species that had 40,000 years to develop would not be weak, unless there was something even stronger out there. Something that scared them enough to make them invisible. Admiral Salith said, I recommend that we do not go to those coordinates. We do not know what we will find. We do not know what kind of trap we might be walking into. Vorath considered her words. She was wise for her age. Her logic was sound. Any sensible commander would turn back, report his findings to the council, wait for more information. But Vorath was not sensible. He was Vexery, and the Vexery did not run from the unknown. They conquered it. Your concerns are noted, he told Salith. But we will continue to the coordinates. If this species is hiding, I want to know why. If there is something out there that frightens them, I want to see it for myself. And if they think they can hide from the Vexery Dominion, I will personally teach them how wrong they are. Salith wanted to argue more, but she knew it was pointless. The Admiral had made his decision. The fleet would travel to Earth, whatever Earth was, and they would find whatever was waiting for them there. She returned to her station and stared at the star map. The red dot marking Earth seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. 40,000 years of silence? 40,000 years of invisibility. An entire species vanished from the galactic stage. Something was very wrong. She could feel it in her bones. But she was a junior officer, and junior officers followed orders. The fleet resumed its journey. 9 days of travel stretched before them. 9 days to wonder. 9 days to prepare. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, Something was waiting. It had been waiting for a very, very long time. And it was not afraid of the Vexari. It had stopped being afraid of anything along. Time ago, the journey took 9 days at maximum speed. Admiral Vorath spent most of that time studying everything the scientists had learned about the destroyed probe. He memorized the images of Earth, with its blue oceans and white clouds. He listened to the strange music that the humans had sent into space. He watched their recorded messages over and over. Studying the soft creatures who spoke of peace and friendship, he was looking for weakness. He always looked for weakness. On the 9th day, the fleet arrived at the coordinates. What they found was nothing. "Admiral, there is no star system here," the navigation officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. "The coordinates are empty. Just open space." Vorath stared at the view screen. It showed only darkness, an endless void, without stars or planets. The coordinates had pointed to nothing at all. Had the probe's data been corrupted? Had humanity tricked them somehow? "Scan the area," he ordered. "Search for anything. Any sign of life, any artificial structures, any energy signatures." The scanning officer worked his controls. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The screens remained empty. "Nothing, Admiral. There is absolutely nothing here." Vorath felt his anger rising. He had traveled 9 days for nothing. He had wasted time and fuel chasing a ghost. He was about to order the fleet to turn back when something happened. The lights on the bridge flickered. It was subtle, just a brief dimming that lasted less than a second. But Vorath noticed it. He noticed everything. "What was that?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. We are checking our systems now." And the lights flickered again. And when they stabilized, everything had changed. There was a ship in front of them. A single vessel, white and elegant, floating perfectly still in the empty space. It was perhaps 1/10 the size of the Throne of Ashes. It had no visible weapons, no shield generators, no engine exhaust. It was simply there, as if it had always been there, and they had somehow failed to notice it until now. "Where did that come from?" Vorath shouted. "It did not arrive through warp. It did not decloak. My sensors show nothing. How is that ship there?" No one had an answer. The scanning officer ran every test he could think of. The ship appeared real, solid, made of matter and metal. But it had appeared from nowhere. It had broken every law of physics that the Vexari understood. Then a transmission came through. Audio only, crystal clear, and perfect Vexari. "This is the Earth vessel Olive Branch. We received your signal. We would like to talk." The voice was calm and gentle. It spoke the Vexari language without accent, as if it had been speaking it for centuries. This should have been impossible. The Vexari had never shared their language with any other species. Yet this human spoke it perfectly. Vorath's hand moved toward the weapons console. His instinct was to fire, to destroy this strange ship before it could threaten him. But something stopped him. Perhaps it was the way the ship had appeared. Perhaps it was the knowledge that his weapons might not work against something that could ignore the laws of physics. Perhaps it was simple curiosity. "You destroyed our probe," the voice continued. It was not angry. It was not accusing. It was simply stating a fact. "We understand. We once did the same to others, before we learned better. We are not here for revenge. We are here to ask a question." Vorath found his voice. "What question?" There was a pause. When the voice spoke again, it was softer, almost sad. "Would you like to know why you have never found us? Why no one has? Would you like to know what is really out there, beyond your little empire?" Salith watched her admiral's face. She had served under him for 30 years. She had seen him face terrible enemies without flinching. She had seen him order the destruction of entire planets without hesitation. But she had never seen him look uncertain before. Now, for the first time, Admiral Vorath did not know what to do. "Show me," he said finally. The view screen changed. It did not change because anyone on the bridge gave an order. It changed because the human ship made it change. Overriding the Vexari systems as easily as breathing, what appeared on the screen was horror. It showed worlds. Thousands of worlds, but they were not living worlds. They were graveyards. Their surfaces were scorched and cracked. Their atmospheres were gone. Their cities, if they had ever had cities, were nothing but dust. These worlds had been alive once. They had held civilizations, cultures, histories. Now they held only death. What happened to them? Vorath whispered. Something old, the human voice replied. Something that sleeps in the spaces between galaxies. It wakes when it detects certain signatures. Aggression, expansion, the electromagnetic fingerprints of war. Every great empire in this galaxy has eventually woken it. Every one of them has been destroyed. The images continued. Empire after empire, reduced to nothing. Species that had built wonders beyond imagination, erased from existence. The Vexari were powerful, but compared to some of these ancient civilizations, they were children playing with toys. We found the pattern 40,000 years ago, the human voice said. We had just achieved faster-than-light travel. We were so proud, so eager to meet our neighbors. Another pause. Our first colony ship woke something. 7 billion humans died in the first week. We thought it was the end. Salith spoke without thinking. But you survived. We adapted. We learned to move quietly, to build without signatures, to watch without being seen. We mapped the sleeping places. We developed technologies that leave no trace. For 40,000 years, we have walked among the stars in silence. The screen showed the galaxy now, a vast spiral of stars and dust. And scattered throughout it, hidden in the quiet places between the burning empires, were thousands of tiny lights. Human settlements. Human stations. Human ships. An entire civilization that had learned to be invisible. This is why you have never found us, the voice said. We did not want to be found. Finding us would mean death, for you and for us. Vorath stared at the screen. His mind was struggling to accept what he was seeing. 40,000 years of hiding. 40,000 years of watching other species rise and fall. An entire race that had chosen silence over conquest. Tell us this, he asked. We are your enemy. We destroyed your probe. Oh, you destroyed a message in a bottle. A test. We have sent thousands of them over the centuries. Most species that find them react as you did, with violence. They are not ready. They will never be ready. And us. The longest pause yet. Trace the probe back. That takes curiosity. You held your fire when we appeared. That takes restraint. And you ask questions before attacking. That takes wisdom. You are not ready either. But you might be teachable. The white ship floated silently in space, waiting for an answer. Behind it, the ghost of every dead empire in the galaxy seemed to watch, and Admiral Vorath, for the first time in his long life, understood that the universe was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The Vexari were not the hunters. They were the prey. They had always been the prey. They simply had not known it until now. The bridge of the Throne of Ashes had never been so quiet. Every officer stood frozen at their station, staring at the view screen. The images of dead worlds still lingered in their minds. The weight of what they had learned pressed down on them like a physical force. Admiral Vorath broke the silence first. His voice was rough, stripped of its usual confidence. You say this thing sleeps. You say it wakes when it detects aggression and expansion. But the Vexari have been expanding for 11,000 years. We have fought countless wars. Why has it not come for us? The human voice answered from the white ship. You are small. Vorath felt a flash of anger. Small, we rule over 3,000 worlds? Our fleets number in the millions. The universe contains 400 billion stars in this galaxy alone. Your empire is a single grain of sand on an endless beach. The thing that sleeps does not notice grains of sand. It notices mountains. It notices noise. And so far, you have been quiet enough to survive. The word so far hung in the air like a threat. Salith stepped forward. She had been thinking while the others stood in shock. The empires you showed us, the ones that were destroyed. How big were they? Most of them ruled at least 10,000 worlds before they were noticed. Some ruled hundreds of thousands. The largest controlled over 1 million star systems. They had technologies that would seem like magic to you, ships that could cross the galaxy in hours, weapons that could destroy suns. None of it mattered. When the sleeper wakes, nothing matters. Then why does it spare the small? Salith asked. We do not know for certain. Perhaps it does not consider small civilizations worth the effort. Perhaps it is waiting for them to grow large enough to be noticed. Or perhaps, the voice paused, perhaps it enjoys watching them rise before it knocks them down. Vorith felt sick. He was a warrior, a conqueror. He had faced death many times without fear. But this was different. This was not an enemy he could fight. This was not a battle he could win. This was something so vast and terrible that his entire civilization was nothing more than an insect beneath its notice. You've been watching us, he said. For how long? Since before your species learned to write, we have watched many species like yours. The proud, the aggressive, the conquerors. Most of them grow too fast and too loud. They attract attention. They die screaming, wondering what they did wrong. But some survive. A few, the ones who learn quickly, the ones who accept that the universe does not care about their pride, the ones who become quiet. The view screen changed again. This time it showed something different. Not dead worlds, but living ones. Hidden stations in the darkness between stars. Cities built inside hollow asteroids. Ships that moved without engines, without signatures, without leaving any trace of their passage. And people. Humans, yes, but also other species. Beings with scales and feathers and too many eyes. Creatures made of crystal and light. Shapes that Varath's mind could barely understand. Thousands of different species, living together in secret places that no scanner could detect. We are not alone in our hiding, the human voice said. Over 40,000 years, we have found others, survivors, refugees, species whose empires fell and whose remnants learned to be silent. We have built something together, not an empire. Empires are loud. We have built a community, a network, a family of the quiet. You are showing us this because you want us to join, Vorath asked. We are showing you this because something has changed. The sleeper is beginning to stir. Not because of you. Something else has woken it. Something we do not understand. Within 1,000 years, perhaps less, it will rise fully. And when that happens, there will be nowhere left to hide. The weight of the words pressed down on Varath's shoulders. For 11,000 years, the Vexari had believed they were the masters of their fate. They had conquered and killed and built their empire on the bones of their enemies. They had been so proud. Now he understood that their pride was a joke. Their empire was a joke. Everything they had built was nothing more than a sandcastle waiting for the tide. What do you want from us? He asked. We want you to choose. You can return to your dominion. You can continue to expand, to conquer, to make war. You will have a few more centuries of glory. Perhaps even a millennium. But eventually, you will grow too large, too loud. And then you will join all the other dead empires in the graveyard of the stars. Or you can learn. You can become quiet. You can join the network, share what you know, and help us prepare for what is coming. When the sleeper fully wakes, we will need every ship, every soldier, every mind that we can gather. Alone, none of us can survive. Together, we might have a chance. Salith looked at her admiral. She could see the struggle in his eyes. He was a conqueror. His entire life had been built on the belief that strength meant dominance, that power meant control. What the humans were offering was completely different. It was cooperation. It was humility. It was admitting that the Vexari were not the greatest power in the universe. It was the hardest thing anyone had ever asked of him. If we join you, Vorath said slowly, what happens to our empire? Our worlds? Our people? Nothing changes, except how you grow. You keep your worlds. You keep your people. But you stop expanding. You learn to be satisfied with what you have. You develop technologies that leave no trace. You become part of something larger than yourself. And if we refuse, The white ship was silent for a long moment. Then we will leave you alone. We will not fight you. We will not threaten you. We will simply remove ourselves from your path and let the universe take its course. In a few centuries, you will be dust, and we will mourn you as we have mourned so many others. Vorath stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by his officers, his weapons, his power. Everything he had spent his life building seemed suddenly small and fragile. He had come here to conquer. He had come here to prove that the Vexari were the strongest force in the galaxy instead. He had learned that he was nothing, but he had also learned something else. He had learned that there was still a chance. A small chance, hidden in the shadows, built by species that had refused to give up. A chance to survive. A chance to fight back. He made his decision. "Teach us," he said. The white ship moved closer. Its hull seemed to shimmer with hidden light. "Then follow us," the human voice said, "and welcome to the quiet war." Behind them, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere in the depths of space, something ancient shifted in its sleep, and for the first time in 11,000 years, Vexari Dominion began to learn what it truly meant to survive. The white ship led them through space that should not have existed. Admiral Vorath watched in silence as reality seemed to fold around them. They did not travel through normal space. Instead, they slipped through cracks in the universe itself, moving through hidden pathways that no Vexari scanner had ever detected. After 3 hours of impossible travel, they emerged into a pocket of space that made Vorath's breath catch in his throat. It was a city. Not a city on a planet, but a city in space itself. Thousands of structures floated in perfect harmony, connected by bridges of light and tubes of transparent material. Ships of every design moved between the buildings, some familiar and some completely alien. And everywhere there were people, so many different kinds of people, beings with blue skin and 4 arms, worked alongside creatures that looked like walking trees. Entities made of pure energy floated past hulking giants covered in armor. Small, delicate beings with wings shared conversation with things that had no visible form at all. Every species that had ever learned to survive was here, gathered in this hidden place. "This is the haven," the human voice said. "One of many. For 40,000 years we have built these places in the quiet spaces of the universe. Here, there is no war. Here, there is no conquest. Here, there is only survival and preparation." The Vexari fleet docked at a station on the edge of the haven. Vorath was the first to step off his ship. He had brought no weapons. Somehow, he understood that weapons would be useless here. A human woman was waiting for him at the docking port. She was small by Vexari standards, with dark hair and eyes that held an ancient sadness. She smiled when she saw him, and the smile was warm and genuine. "Admiral Vorath," she said. "I am Director Chen. Welcome to the Haven. You knew my name? We know many things. We have been watching your species for a very long time. We know your history, your victories, your cruelties. We also know that you came here instead of running away. That takes courage." Salith had followed her admiral off the ship. She looked around at the alien city with wonder in her eyes. How is this possible? How can so many species live together in peace? Director Chen's smile faded slightly. It is not always peaceful. We have our disagreements, our conflicts, but we have learned to resolve them without violence. We have to. Violence attracts attention. Violence brings death. So we found other ways to settle our differences. She led them through the station into a larger chamber. Screens lined the walls, showing images of galaxies, of stars, of the vast emptiness between them. And in the center of the chamber, floating in a tank of blue liquid, was something that made Vorath step back in shock. It was a piece of the sleeper, just a fragment, no larger than Vorath's hand. But even that small piece radiated wrongness. Looking at it made his eyes hurt. His mind could not properly process what he was seeing. It was alive and dead at the same time. It was ancient beyond meaning. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever witnessed. We recovered this from a dead world, Director Chen explained. a world that fought back when the sleeper came. They managed to destroy a small part of it before they were wiped out. We study it. We try to understand it. In 40,000 years, we have learned very little. Can it be killed? Vorith asked. We do not know. What we do know is that hiding alone will not save us forever. The sleeper is waking. Something has disturbed it. Within centuries, perhaps within decades, it will rise fully. And when it does, it will come for everything. She turned to face the Vexery directly. Her eyes were hard now, filled with the determination of someone who had spent her entire life preparing for a battle she might never win. But that is why we need you. Not because you are strong, not because your weapons are powerful, but because you are different. Your species thinks in ways that others do not. You see solutions that others miss. Every civilization in the Haven brings something unique. Together, we are more than any of us could be alone. Over the following months, the Vexery learned. They learned to build ships that left no energy signature. They learned to communicate using methods that could not be detected. They learned to move through space like ghosts, leaving no trace of their passage. But more importantly, they learned to work with others. Former enemies became allies. Species that had fought each other for millennia shared technology and knowledge. The old ways of conquest and dominance were set aside, placed by something new. Cooperation.cylith became one of the most dedicated students. She spent hours studying the fragment of the sleeper, trying to understand what it was and how it could be stopped. She worked alongside scientists from a dozen different species, combining their knowledge in ways that had never been attempted before. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to find answers. The sleeper was not a single being. It was a network, a vast intelligence spread across the darkness between galaxies. It had existed since before the stars were born. It did not hate the civilizations it destroyed. It did not even notice them. Not really. They were simply noise, interference, static that needed to be cleaned up. But noise could be shaped. Static could carry messages. And if enough voices spoke together in perfect harmony, they might be able to create a sound that the sleeper would actually hear. Not a threat. Not a challenge. But a greeting. Admiral Vorith stood at the center of the Haven's War Council. Surrounding him were representatives from 1,000 species. Humans. Vexery. Beings of light and shadow and crystal and flame. All of them had come together for this moment. When our ancestors first reached for the stars, he said, they believed that strength meant dominance. They believed that survival meant conquest. They were wrong. He looked around at the gathered representatives. These were beings his people would have once tried to destroy. Now they were his allies, his friends, his family. True strength is not taking what you want. True strength is building something together. True strength is standing with others even when you are afraid. Especially when you are afraid. The view screen behind him showed the galaxy, vast and beautiful. And somewhere in the darkness beyond, the sleeper stirred. It would wake soon. It would come for them all, but this time would be different. This time, the civilizations of the galaxy would not face their doom alone. This time, they would stand together, united by 40,000 years of preparation. Director Chen stepped forward and placed her hand on Varath's shoulder. The human touch no longer felt strange to him. It felt like solidarity, like hope. The sleeper has destroyed every empire that has ever risen against it, she said. But it has never faced anything like us. It has never faced a family. The War Council began to plan. Ships were mobilized. Weapons were prepared. And across the galaxy, in every hidden haven and secret station, 1 billion quiet voices began to speak together. They were not an empire. They were not conquerors. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. They had learned from 40,000 years of watching civilizations fall. They had built alliances that spanned the stars. And they had one advantage that no other force in the galaxy had ever possessed. They were not afraid to hope. The sleeper would wake. The final battle would come. And when it did, for the first time in the history of the universe, The darkness would face something it had never expected. A light that refused to go out. A family that refused to fall. A word, spoken by every species in the galaxy in perfect unison. Not a surrender. Not a plea. A promise. We are here. We are together. And we will not go quietly into the night. The story of Earth had begun with a single probe, drifting through the darkness with a message of peace. It had ended with a billion voices, united across the stars, preparing to fight for their right to exist. And somewhere in the void, the sleeper heard them coming, for the first time in eternity. It felt something it had never felt before. It was not fear exactly, but it was close, and that was enough. That was the beginning of the end. Or perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of something new.